And good afternoon, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome to another edition of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I'm your host, Tony Defeo. Thank you, as always, for joining me on this fine Saturday afternoon. It's Halloween as I'm taping this, so happy Halloween if you're catching me on YouTube, and if you're catching me on many of our various podcasting platforms, please happy All Saints Day, I guess. So. I thank you all for joining me, and I have several topics I'd like to discuss. Starting up, first of all, I wanted to say hi to everybody in the live chat. There's Boing Boom, and I'm sure many others will be joining me before the show is over. I can't wait to interact with everybody out there. And I wanted to start things off by talking about the Steelers' big 27-24 victory over the Titans last week. It was the battle of the unbeatens, 5-0 versus 5-0. And Pittsburgh prevailed at the end. It looked like it was going to be a runaway in the first half. The Steelers got off to a 24-7 lead, extended to 27-7 early in the third quarter. But the Titans came roaring back over the last 25 minutes or so and almost sent it in overtime. But Steven Gostkowski's 46-yard field goal attempt sailed wide right. And now the Steelers are the only 6-0 team. The only undefeated team in the NFL at 6-0. So I think a lot of people were a little concerned by the Steelers' performance in the second half. What happened there? Well, as I've talked about before, as I've written about already, the Titans are a good team, and they hadn't lost a game since before last Christmas. They won a heck of a run in the playoffs. They made it all the way to the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. They actually were beating the Chiefs in that game at one point before succumbing to the eventual Super Bowl champions. So, the Titans are a good football team. And the Steelers were on a six-quarter run of total dominance between the first half of last week's game and the entire Browns game the week before. I mean, they basically doubled their opponents in yardage, in time of possession. They ran 69 more plays than their opponents. And of course, they were up on the scoreboard 65-14. That just doesn't happen very often in the NFL. And when it does, it doesn't last longer than a game or so. And as we saw in the second half of last week, that caught up to them in the second half, and the Titans adjusted and they made a game of it. And the Steelers were complicit in that. Ben threw 3 picks during the game, but 2 in the second half. The only one I really had a problem with was the last one at the end of the game when he threw basically in the triple coverage to Juju Smith-Schuster, who was lined up in a linebacker. That's the argument that many people who defended the pass have been saying all week. But there were enough people in the area that maybe he should have taken the safer route in that on that play, and maybe checked it down to Deontay Johnson or somebody else who was running underneath, and maybe they would have gotten a first down, or at the very least, you kick a field goal and force the Titans to score a touchdown to win the game. But other than that throw, I really didn't have much of a problem with Roethlisberger's performance. I mean, he actually looked like he was really feeling it in the first half. I think he was really up for this game. The one Titans defender was, I think he was penalized for roughing the passer, and Roethlisberger was pretty animated about it. He was jawing with the guy, and he was pretty critical of the Titans and what they had. I kind of put the Steelers through with the whole COVID thing and forced an early bye. So I think he really wanted this game more than he'll ever admit. And you could tell he was really feeling it in the beginning of the game, the first half of that game. And he was on too. And I think my favorite play in that first half, in a weird way, was the little left-handed pass to Eric Ebron when he was in trouble of getting sacked. I think it was a left-handed pass, whatever. It was almost like a shot put pass, and that picked up some yardage. And that was vintage Ben. That's something he would have done 10 years ago. So that's something we haven't seen from him in a long time. So that was probably my favorite play in the first half. It kind of made me laugh anyway. But other than other things I want to talk about, I thought the key play in that game, something that hasn't really been mentioned much, was after Ben threw the pick and the Titans got on a roll on offense, and it looked like they were going to be they were unstoppable. They had just picked up that first down with about a minute to go on 3rd and long. Tannehill hooked up with A.J. Brown. I think it was a 21-yard pass down to the 25. The play after that, when Tannehill was called for intentional grounding, he was pressured into that by Stephon Tuitt, and that cost them about 10 yards. And I think that was maybe the key play in that game, honestly, because the Titans got, I think, 9 yards after that, and then they had to kick the field goal. If they get 9 yards from the 25 as opposed to the 34 or 35, then it's a much easier field goal attempt, and maybe we're talking about a different outcome in that game if it goes into overtime. So I thought that was the key play in the game. And believe it or not, I think the key drive in that game was the one that resulted in Ben's final pick, because it was right after, all the excitement with the Spillane hit on Derrick Henry, but that was all for naught because 2 plays, the very next play, Minkah Fitzpatrick was called for holding on 4th down, and it gave the Titans a new set of downs, and really just essentially chewed up what was basically the remainder of the fourth quarter and gave the Titans one more shot. That's it. Instead of maybe 2 more possessions, they only had 1 more, and I think the Titans kind of had the Steelers on the ropes at that point. So that was a very, very big drive, and I think they wound up with 36 minutes in time of possession. So I thought that was it doesn't get talked about much, but I think that was key, that they were able to take so much time off the clock there at the end of that game, or on that drive anyway. So those are my thoughts on that game, and I thought Cam Sutton played a great game, filling in for Mike Hilton at slot corner. I guess he played other positions, as we mentioned last week, with their sub packages. Steven Nelson played slot a lot, and Justin Lane came in and played on the outside, and Cam Sutton sort of moved around. But I think he had maybe his best game as a Steeler. I thought he really made a few key plays, and same for Terrell Edmonds. I thought he had a really great game, including he made a great play breaking up a pass on that drive that where Spillane made the splash play with the hit that on Henry, and ultimately the Titans scored a touchdown on that drive. But I thought Edmonds had made a key play on that drive, so I thought that was a good game by him. And it was a good game by Juju, good game by Deontay Johnson. And, the Titans made a concerted effort to take Chase Claypool out of the game. I think he wound up with negative yardage on the day, or at least negative points in fantasy football, because I have him on my fantasy football team, and he got me negative 20. So I know he didn't have a great game at all, but Juju and Deontay Johnson did, and they had 9 catches apiece, and Johnson had 2 touchdowns. So that's the point we keep reinforcing about that receiving core. You take one guy away, you're gonna open things up for 1 or 2 other guys. It's pick your poison. And that's the Steelers have a great thing going on with that receiving core. And to repeat myself for the 100th time, Ben doesn't have to worry about throwing to any one person out of obligation, because they have no divas on that receiving core. It's a bunch of excuse me, talking too much as usual. It's a bunch of team first guys on that team. So, and I think what this game did, this victory, not only did it improve the Steelers' record to 6-0, but I think it legitimized them as a contender. Because I think before that game, I think maybe people wondered if they were for real because of who they played over the first 4 weeks anyway, and then they played the Browns in week 5, and the Browns are always going to be the Brownies to a lot of people, regardless of their record, until they prove otherwise. And so far, they're 5-2, but they've been blown away by their 2 top rivals in the division by a combined score of 76-13. So they're still going to be the Brownies. So anyway, the Steelers went into that game. I don't know what they were thinking, but I know a lot of their fans and critics were wondering if they were for real. And I guess, as an analogy, I'll use an example of my personal life. I've been in between quote unquote real jobs now for a while, maybe a year or so. And I've been during this pandemic, I've been delivering food to pay the bills through one of these gig companies. I won't tell you which one. That's really not important. But last Friday, the Friday before the Titans game, my last delivery of the day, it was a short day. I made a lot of money. I decided this was going to be my last day, or my last delivery of the day. So I was all the way out in McMurray, out in like Washington County, or on the fringes of Washington County. That's how far away from Pittsburgh I was. And it was this long driveway. And I said, I'm not going up that driveway. You just, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you never know. Pittsburgh's roads, we might have a great football team, but we had the Cleveland Browns of roads. They're just awful. And including driveways. I've messed my car up on many of people's driveways doing this. So I said, I'm not gonna go up that driveway. So I took the delivery and I walked up the driveway. It was about 30 yards up. And this house was beautiful, right? It was a beautiful house. And for some reason, as I was walking back down, I don't know if I was feeling euphoric from the walk, the endorphins were kicking in, or if I was just happy that it was my weekend officially. But I said to myself, I'm going to own a house like that someday. And I don't know why I said it, but I said that. And then I got in my car and went home. Now, as of now, I don't have the means to have a house like that. I don't have the financial means to do that. But who knows? Maybe if I land a lucrative position, hopefully in the not so distant future, tangibly, I'll be able, or if I marry Jennifer Aniston, which has always been another dream of mine, I'll be able to tangibly go about buying a house like that. And I think that's what bring it back to the Steelers. I think before last Sunday's game against the Titans, the thought of them getting the number one seed in a bye, the only bye now in the AFC, I think that might have been a pipe dream to many people, including maybe them. Who knows? Because, obviously you have the Chiefs, you have the Ravens in their own division, who they have to contend with, the Bills, and of course the Titans, right? A lot of good teams in the AFC. So the thought of the Steelers beating all those teams out to achieve that kind of goal for the postseason, I don't know about that. They missed the playoffs the last 2 years. Are they for real? Well, now after doing what they did last week and beating the Titans, I think now they can tangibly have that as a goal, the number one seed now. So I think that game was very important for them for a lot of reasons. So I want to say about that. And before I get to my next topic, I wanted to welcome a bunch of folks into the live chat who joined me since I started rambling on. My man, Big Marv, Ezra, Tom Vallejo, I hope I'm saying that right, Hector Hernandez, Kathy Ford, always a regular, longtime listener and viewer of our shows. So, Mule Skinner always has some great takes. So Informed 80, I don't know what that means, but I love it. Wade Johnson, Nathaniel Zarati. So welcome everybody to the live chat and to today's show. And that brings me to topic number 2. And that's my main man, Vince Williams. Speaking of my main man, Vince Williams, one of my favorite Steelers. I'm never shy about it. I follow him on Twitter. Love the guy. I love his story. He was a former 6th-round pick out of Florida State back in 2013. He was kind of thrust into action as a rookie, as a starter, because Larry Foote was hurt in game 1. I mean, the Steelers were pretty compromised going into 2013. I think it was, on paper, maybe Mike Tomlin's worst team. And I think they showed that right away. They started out 0-4 and 2-6. They were salary cap compromised. Some of the players they were counting on to get them through that year, like some of the free agents that they signed, like Stevens Howlings from Pitt, running back that he signed from the Cardinals. He got hurt in week 1. Of course, I mentioned Foote. Marquise Pouncey got hurt. So they were compromised by the cap. They were compromised by a lot of things. And they were really thin at inside linebacker. They had Lawrence Timmons, and then after Foote went down, it was next man up, but we didn't know who that man was going to be. Mike Tomlin had no idea. So he had to throw Vince Williams in there, and he started 11 games that year. And he didn't have a Pro Bowl year. He didn't have a memorable year, but he gained a lot of experience from that season. And I think he's gotten better each year since that day. And now, you see, finally, after last week against the Titans, he had 10 tackles, and I think he had he caused a turnover almost. He smacked Ryan Tannehill pretty hard on a running play in the first half during the Titans' first touchdown drive. And if the Steelers, if they would have recovered that, it would have been huge at that point in the game. But, he had a really great game, and he drew praise from the from the media throughout the week. And reporters were asking Mike Tomlin, why he's suddenly playing better, why he's becoming an all-around better inside linebacker. And Tomlin basically said, look, it's not that he's suddenly gotten better. He's suddenly getting more chances now because, for the past last year especially, he was in a rotation earlier in his career. He was in a rotation with Shazier and Timmons. He never really could crack into the starting lineup. He did in 2017 and 2018. And, he did pretty good for himself. But, the Steelers are, they were looking for that new Ryan Shazier. So heading into 2019, they not only signed Mark Barron, the free agent from the Rams, but they went out and drafted Devin Bush. So, because that's where the position is heading. And, you want that athletic, fast, inside line athlete who can move from side to side, who can cover deep, that kind of thing. And Vince Williams, as far as a lot of people are concerned, has never been that guy. But, here he is again this year, getting a lot of playing time, and he started, every game this year. I think he has anyway. And, now he's going to be counted on more than ever with the injury to Devin Bush. And, I think he's a great study in never giving up and regardless of the roadblocks in front of you, always staying with it, always looking to improve your craft. Because one thing you can say about Vince Williams, he's a worker. He's a fighter. He's never backed down from anyone, right? I mean, he's a Pittsburgh Steeler through and through. And here he is at the age of 30, and he's finally maybe starting to get the recognition that, maybe he deserved a long time ago. So he's never going to be Devin Bush. He's never going to be Ryan Shazier. He's never going to be Lawrence Timmons as far as an athlete. But, I think it's a lesson for a lot of guys like that. It's a lesson to Robert Spillane, the undrafted free agent. Hang in there. Always keep learning, keep trying to get better, because you never know where that could lead. And just because you're not a first-round pick, just because you're not a highly sought-after free agent, doesn't mean you can't carve out a nice career for yourself in the NFL. So it's nice to see Vince Williams finally getting accolades at this stage of his career, and I think the Steelers are going to need him. They're going to need his leadership. They're going to need his veteran leadership moving forward, especially with Devin Bush down and a youngster like Spillane and even UG3. I think he's out for Sunday's game. He's officially out for Sunday's game, but obviously they'll be counting on him to give them reps throughout the year. So they're going to be leaning on a veteran like Williams to help them get through their rookie years, because they're both Spillane and Gilbert. They might not be rookies officially, but they essentially are rookies. So it's again, I've always been a big fan of Williams, and it's nice to see guys like that, lower round picks, undrafted free agents, prove people wrong and become longtime Steelers, longtime NFL players. So kudos to Vince Williams. And that's going to do it for the first half of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. If you're watching on YouTube, please stick around. If you're listening on our many podcasting platforms, or one of our many podcasting platforms, please download part 2. And welcome to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to everybody in the live chat for joining me today. Let's see if we can bring up some comments from people. I know people are always getting comments, and while I'm rambling on, I never get to most of them until I do the Q&A part. So let's see what we have in here before I get to my next topic. Here's one from Mule Skinner, always a contributor. I see Vance, meaning Vance McDonald, the tight end, playing more in this game against the against the Ravens, chipping and helping out Ben in a passing game against the Ratbirds. That's our, as you know, it's the Steel Nation's unofficial name for the Ravens. And yeah, that's a good point. I can definitely see that. He's in addition to being a pass catching tight end, he's a pretty accomplished blocker. So here's one from Steelers Pittsburgh about Spillane. He is hungry, and of course that was on full display on that monster hit against Derrick Henry the other day, which at the goal line, which I think Spillane might have been worse for wear there, but he stopped him from scoring a touchdown. That's really all that matters, and he's healthy. And according to Vince Williams in a sit-down interview with Missy Matthews of Steelers.com, they respected Spillane's performance so much they let him sit up in the front of the plane, which I guess is reserved for the veteran players. So it shows you how much they thought of his performance. He didn't really show up much on the stat sheet, but obviously he wasn't a huge liability, or he would have been more. We would have known about that afterwards. And I got to get to this $10 super chat from Informed 80. Not only is he donating $10 to the cause, and we thank you, Informed 80, but he's making life easy on me. I don't have to think with a fancy answer to a question. He just says, "Go Steelers, go!" And absolutely. So I just want to talk about one more thing before I get to some more questions, and that is Sunday's game against the Ravens and how big it is. I think that goes without saying. You got 6-0 against 5-1, and the winner of tomorrow's game will be in first place. If it's the Ravens, they'll be in first place via the tiebreaker because they'll have the victory over the Steelers. If it's the Steelers, they'll have it obviously via the tiebreaker, and of course they'll have a 2-game lead. So via the math too. So it's big. I realize they're 6-0, and there is room for error because they still have 10 games to play, and no matter what happens on Sunday, they'll have time to make up for it. But man, if they win this game, if they take care of business against the Ravens and win what I think is going to be a close game, then they're really setting themselves up for a fantastic finish to the season. Because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you have the Cowboys coming up after that, and then you have the Bengals, and those are obviously two very winnable games. And I think they play the Jaguars after that, if I'm not mistaken. If I am mistaken, please correct me. But then I know they have the Ravens on Thanksgiving night at Heinz Field, which is only a few weeks away. So if they win on Sunday and then take care of business over the next few weeks and then beat the Ravens again, then wow, you're looking at a scenario where they can wrap up the AFC North by early December, theoretically. I'm getting way ahead of myself, but there is that slight chance, right? So it's huge. It's huge for Pittsburgh tomorrow, or on Sunday. Obviously, it's not going to be easy. They have to find a way to stop Lamar Jackson, which they did last year at Heinz Field when they played here on October the 6th. But every game's different, and obviously they're not going to have Devin Bush. They're likely not going to have Mike Hilton. I think he's expected to miss. He's listed as questionable, but word is he might miss that game. And of course, they're going to be without Gilbert, who I can't believe I'm saying that because who would have thought they would have been counting on his reps as recently as a couple weeks ago. So they're going to be down some players, and you figure they're going to have Sutton playing the slot, and Edmonds will have extra responsibility as a spy, perhaps. Or I don't know how they're maybe Minka will be the spy for Jack. I don't know how they're going to do that. Yeah, I don't know how that's all going to unfold, but they're going to have their work cut out for them against Jackson. But Jackson has yet to really prove that he's a big game quarterback. He's lost in the playoffs twice. He was one and done, and this will be his first opportunity going up against Ben Roethlisberger, who has won a big game or two in this day. So it's a pretty intriguing matchup. You have the old, pocket passer, although Ben's more than just that, as we know. He likes to make things happen with his feet. but he's no Lamar Jackson. He's kind of a huge contrast to where the quarterback position is going in 2020 with the RPO. You know, the better athletes playing quarterback, the guys who are really mobile. It seems like every young quarterback has to fit that mold, and Jackson is the extreme of that new prototype of quarterback. So there isn't anybody like him in the game, really, that can beat you with his feet, you know, like Lamar, with his legs, I should say, like Jackson can. So it's definitely a contrast in style, and Jackson has an opportunity to show a lot of people that, hey, look, I'm not Baker Mayfield. You know, when I go up against Ben, I make, you know, I can win a big game against a legend like that. So I'm really excited. I was excited about last week's game, but I'm even more excited about this week's game. I don't like the Ravens. I'm not shy about saying that. There's just something about them. They're not quite the Patriots in terms of like, ooh, you know, I want to see them go down, but they're kind of like that neighbor. I always, you know, compare them to that neighbor that will very easily call the cops on you if your car is like an inch over onto their, you know, on their driveway. Like, you know how sometimes you park and you don't know if you're like kind of overlapping onto your, you know, neighbor's driveway. And I have a neighbor. I live in a building, but I have a guy who lives in a house next door to this building. And a few years ago, I was like an inch over into his driveway. He was like, I was going to call the police until I realized it was you. I was like, man, that's kind of extreme. So that's kind of how the Ravens are, you know, John Harbaugh, you know, I never really liked him as a coach, even though he's very successful. Maybe that's why I don't like him, because he's really good at his job. And the Ravens are always just a pain in the butt, and they're always right there. If they're not winning the division, they're standing in Pittsburgh's way of winning the AFC North. So I always get excited for Ravens week, you know, especially when they play at M&T Bank Stadium. I just love when they beat them there. So I'm really looking forward to this, and to repeat myself, if they walk away with a victory, it's gonna be a huge down payment on not just the AFC North, but that number one seed in the bye. And yes, beating the Titans, that made them legitimate as far as a contender, in my opinion, and it made them realize that, hey, we can achieve some things that maybe even we didn't think we could achieve before the year started, or even before last week's game. But you still have to cash in. Now you have that opportunity, and now you have to cash in, and starting with the Ravens. So those are my thoughts on all things Steelers, and now I'll open things up to you guys over the last 10 minutes or so, and I'll take your questions. So let's see if I can find some old ones while you're asking me some new ones. Let's see here. Here's a comment from Informed 80. The Steelers' spirit in the locker room and with the fans is at an all-time high. I would agree with that. I'm sure we won't be taking anyone lightly this season. We are Super Bowl bound. Well, I hope you're right. And again, they certainly have an opportunity to make that happen, more so than at any other time since 2010, I would say. As far as 2017, they had a great record, but there was always that the boogeyman that the Patriots represented, and that it seemed impossible for them to beat the Patriots in a big game. Whereas this year they don't appear to be a factor, although it's still pretty early. If I would have to pick a boogeyman right now, it would be the Chiefs because of Patrick Mahomes and because they're the Super Bowl champions. But the Steelers' overall track record against Kansas City is pretty good. They had that one game against the Chiefs where they lost, that Mahomes played, but that's a really small sample size. I mean, obviously he's fantastic, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't fear that matchup because I would. I respect the heck out of Patrick Mahomes and what he can do. He's the best in the business right now. But I wouldn't fear them as much as I fear the Patriots, and maybe to my own detriment, because maybe I'm just going on reputation with that one. And the Chiefs are obviously a very talented football team. So I'm I mean, I think this is their best chance of making it to the Super Bowl in about a decade, in my honest opinion. Let's see what we have here. If I scroll down, any questions? Here's a comment from Ezra, one of our frequent contributors. I said it over and over. With our defense, all we got to do is keep up with the Chiefs. Well, there you go. Because the Chiefs' defense isn't the greatest, and the Steelers' offense has shown it to be pretty potent. It can be pretty potent at times this year. It's certainly been pretty productive. It hasn't scored less than 26 points in any game this year. So whether you think it's explosive or not, it doesn't really matter. It's damn productive. So Jerry Cherry Band, again, to repeat myself with that great band, they do a lot of work for Jeff Hartman's show, and I think some other podcasts. They do the songs for those shows. So please check those podcasts out, and I'm sure you can find Jerry Cherry Band on YouTube. So check him out. They have a great sound, and they do great work. So kudos to them. And here's one from Tom Vallejo comment. I live here in Texas. Cowboys fans talking trash about how they always beat the Steelers in the regular season, and this year will be no different. Okay, well, I mean, if they can pull that off this year, good luck. With Ben DiNucci, the former Pitt player, as the quarterback, I think Steeler fans might want to remind them of what Pittsburgh had to go through last year with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges, and how things were by the end of the year when they were down to their third-string quarterback. So if they could pull that off, I mean, that would be the ultimate Tomlin trap game. So that's obviously for next week's show, and not this week, but the Ravens. Here's one from Ryan O'Toole. How many sacks do you see the Steelers getting, Tony? Well, right now they're on pace for 69. Do I think they're going to get that many? Probably not. I mean, they were on pace for 80 not long ago. If I had to wager, I guess I'd say you would it would be smart money to say around 60, between 60 and 65 at this point. Which, I mean, that's a heck of a season. That would be a team record. So, and it would certainly lead the NFL. So if they can, there would be no shame in accruing that many sacks before the year's over. So I think you're looking at between 60 and 65 at this point. Here's one from a newbie, as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen this name before. Kieran Broomsey. It would be nice to play the Chiefs in Pittsburgh. Yeah, obviously, yeah. But I think, as I've said before, the one great thing about the pandemic, I guess, if you want to call anything great about it, is the lack of fans in the stands. What's the most that we've seen so far? 5,000 in any stadium this year, maybe 10. I think 10 or 15. So, Arrowhead's a pretty tough place to play with a jam-packed stadium, but with 10 or 15,000, it's not nearly as intimidating. But you're right; it's always nice to play at home, just for familiarity's sake, and the lack of travel. Ooh, I think I found a one from Big Marv. This one, he has a lot to say on this one. Let's see what he has to say. I'm tired of listening to all the talking heads say we aren't for real. And each week we keep proving them wrong. William McGinnis and James Jones never give the Steelers their respect. Well, hey, the great thing about that is it's not like college football where you have to rely on voters, to give you respect in order to improve your playoff positioning. They could doubt all year long if they want, but as long as the Steelers keep doing it on the field, it's really all that matters. And if they do have doubters all year and they wind up winning it all, how sweet would that taste, right? So, yeah, I mean, there does seem to be a small contingent of national reporters and former players that never seem to want to respect the Steelers. And hey, that's just, I think that goes hand in hand with them being a national team. And there was a study released the other day stating that the Steelers are the most hated team in the NFL. Well, I mean, that's just, you could probably say similar things about the Cowboys and the Patriots and those kind of teams, any kind of national team, they're going to have a huge following of fans, but you're also going to have a lot of people that just don't like them. It's just how it goes, whether you're the Steelers or the Cowboys or the Yankees or Notre Dame or the Lakers, you name it, and it goes for the superstars too, whether you're Ben, Tom Brady, LeBron James, Sidney Crosby, if you're a Penguins fan. I always forget how he's so popular here, but anytime you see a comment section, a national comment section, Sidney Crosby, they talk about him like Steeler fans talk about Tom Brady. I mean, there's just so much hatred for him nationally, and I guess internationally, because the NHL is an international league. So that's just how it goes, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, what anybody thinks. It's just a matter of do they have the team to pull it off? And I think they proved last week that they have the team to go a long way this year. Here's one from Boston 5, a comment. That's another new name. So welcome, Boston 5. If I haven't seen you on here before, welcome. There were 3 groups, 2 people in each group in my entire section last week in Tennessee. I don't think home field advantage makes a big difference this year aside from travel and comfort. And I agree. And another great thing about that is if you look at the contenders in the AFC, the farthest Pittsburgh would potentially have to travel would be to Kansas City, because I don't think the Raiders aren't going to make a late push to have a better record than Pittsburgh. Same thing with the Chargers or anybody else out that way, if there is any other team out that way. And I agree. I think the only this is one year where if you don't get the number 1 seed, and I've said this before, 2 through 7, I think it's all pretty equal, because you might have to travel, but you don't have to deal with the crowds. And I think that's a big part of playing on the road. The travel is a big deal, but I think it's the crowd, and not really the influence on the players, but as I've said before, the influence on the officials. I think they have a bigger influence on officials than we'll ever know. Not consciously, but subconsciously. So, yeah. Here's another one from Boston 5, a question. If I can find it here. Which combo plays more snaps on the field at the same time this week? Vinny and Rob or Cam and Mike? Who do you mean by Mike? Mike Hilton? Because I don't know if Mike Hilton's going to play. I would say maybe Vinny and Marcus Allen, or Vinny and somebody, because Marcus Allen's the backup inside linebacker. So I don't know. Let's see what else we have here. Take a few more before I wrap things up. Here's a comment from Mule. ESPN hates the Steelers and have hated them for decades. I don't know if that's true. I think we kind of assume that the national people in general, and I just said, there does seem to be a segment of the national reporters that don't like the Steelers. But I think overall, I think we always assume that the national media hates the Steelers or whatever home team you want to mention, because they're not biased towards the Steelers. So like a Phil Simms or a Chris Collinsworth or Troy Aikman, or I guess eventually Tony Romo is going to start getting that label, because we always assume that the neutral color analyst or play-by-play guy is slanted towards the other team. Like it could be Pittsburgh against the Falcons. I mean, who's more of a national team, right? The Steelers, right? But if you're a Steeler fan and you're hearing Tony Romo say, or whomever say, look, this is what the Falcons have to do to win this game, you might say, oh, well, Tony Romo wants the Falcons to win. So I just think it's a natural feeling that we all have about the national guys in general. Informed 80 comments, people hate greatness. Yeah, that's true of any team, any successful team in any sport. They have their fans, but they also have their detractors too. Let's see what else we have here before I wrap things up. Well, man, maybe this is a bit of reporting from Boston 5, who's been very active in today's show. She's saying thank you. He says, I think they gave Hilton clearance, but yeah, that's a good wild card call with Allen. I like it. I don't know. I was doing some research before the show, and from what I read, that from what I read, they were expecting Hilton to miss, but some of that, when it comes to injuries, sometimes it's hour to hour. So I hope he does play because he's a very valuable member of that defense. And if he is in there as a slot, then that's one less domino they have to move around, or one less chess piece they have to move around to deal with the likes of Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, his tight end. The Steelers' history with elite tight ends, and he's certainly one of the better tight ends in the league now. And young quarterbacks tend to rely on their tight ends, and Lamar Jackson certainly loves Andrews. So yeah, they're gonna need all the ducks in a row to be able to deal with him. If you have Mike Hilton in the slot, then you can have obviously Edmonds free to cover the tight end. I'm not an X and O's guy. I mean, some of these experts out there like Jeffrey Benedict and Kevin Smith are film guys. They might listen to me talking, go, what's this guy even talking about? But I do know this. It is important that they have Mike Hilton in there for that secondary. Here's a comment from Ryan O'Toole. A question, I should say. Thoughts on Edmonds this season? I think this is his best year so far. Again, he's not much of a splash player, but they certainly have enough of those in there where, when you're talking about TJ Watt and Bud Dupree and Minka Fitzpatrick, Joe Haden is a bit of a splash player. He seems to come out with the big picks. They just need a steady force at safety, and Edmonds appears to be that. And if he was, and I've said this before, if he was really a major liability, he wouldn't have made it into his third year without Pittsburgh looking for a solution and a replacement for him. You saw what they did with Artie Burns. I mean, I thought he was going to be there. I thought he was the real deal in his rookie year, but by the beginning of his third year, he was benched, and you really never saw him ever again. So I think he's having his best year, and with a guy like him, he was a bit of a reach in the first round, but it's nice to see him. I think it's important that he gets better with each year, and I think he has gotten better each and every year. So we'll see. I look forward to seeing how much better he gets as this season goes along and subsequent years. Well, here's a comment from Steelers Pittsburgh regarding one of our experts, Jeffrey Benedict. Jeffrey Benedict thinks that the Steelers are set up perfectly to take down the Ratbirds. Well, there you go. He knows his stuff, so I trust his opinion. So thank you for that, Steelers Pittsburgh. Mule Skinner says it's good to see Lane getting some playing time. Yeah, I mean, here's a former third-round pick. In many ways, Pittsburgh's probably hoping that he develops into a good outside cornerback because Joe Haden's not getting any younger, and they're going to have to make a lot of difficult decisions in terms of their contract salary, their salary cap in the next year or so. So the quicker Justin Lane improves, the better. And here's a $5 super chat from Boston 5, who he's probably the MVP of this show. So thank you for the $5. We should be paying you for as active as you've been. Well, I should. I don't want to speak for anybody else. Anyway, he says, thanks for the show. And you're right. Hilton is questionable. Keep up the great work. Well, there you go. My man is on top of everything. So with that, I will bid you all adieu. And I thank you for participating and for listening and for watching and for asking all kind of great questions and making some great comments. And again, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to listen to our family of podcasts, and don't forget to check out Behind the Steel Curtain, our website. I will talk to you guys on Monday on the Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis. Enjoy Sunday's game. Enjoy the rest of Halloween, and go Steelers.